Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, September the 16th, 2024.
I'm Jan Levine.
I'm Russ Cohn from Sportsology.com and NHLDraftBuzz.com.
And I'm Michael Agello from Parts Unknown, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Well, Parts Unknown is somewhere in the Buffalo area, obviously. Okay, we'll dispense with the normal Monday post NFL baseball stuff because there is a lot of hockey news going on. We'll start with the breaking stuff. Jan, you read because you just made me aware of it. It just happened just as I was setting up the show. So we'll go ahead and reveal.
Yeah, so interesting enough, Arthur Gross, who reports on Andrew Gross, who reports on the Islanders, basically just broke that Patrick Roy is, I guess, in his press conference as camp is getting underway, revealed that Ilya Sorokin underwent off-season back surgery. Now, nothing was kind of given, at least what I've seen so far, in terms of details, in terms of breadth, extent, if he's expected to be out, right? We all know that they've mentioned that he's been dealing with an injury, that no word has been given whether or not he would have been ready on time for camp, but this is part of the reason for his delay, why he didn't skate with the team on Thursday. But clearly this coming out on September 16th, his camps are about to begin, is not necessarily ideal. Now, all depends clearly when he had that surgery, what that surgery was, what the recovery period. But unfortunately, from what I've seen, all of those questions are left unknown at this point in time.
Right. Now, somebody in the chat was saying Lamoriello said on Friday he was skating and there was no concern on his availability for the start of the season. Obviously, this report coming out throws some shade on that because when you have a back surgery, remember, Vasilevsky, and he had back surgery, but he had back surgery in, I think it was August. I think it was like early August. And he missed the first 2 months of the regular season. And he was never quite the same.
No, not that season, yeah.
No, I mean, Jonas Johansson did his best but he's Jonas Johansson. So they made the playoffs. But Russ, this is a bubble team, and they need Sorokin at 100%. And I don't know if they're going to get Sorokin at 100%. We don't know.
Well, I mean, they have a good goalie right now in Varlamov. And so what I think they'll do is give him more time than Tampa gave Vasilevsky because they have a better goalie. And I think that will help them. I think, they can give him an extra month. Basically, they can give Sorokin an extra month. And since he's already been rehabbing this summer, maybe that will he'll get better results than Vasilevsky. Nothing's ideal, and they're probably still not a playoff team, but at this point, there's no point in rushing them. So at least they have a really great backup, better than most. So I think they could, weather the storm.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is with Vasilevsky, right? We knew that the surgery in itself was a fairly, I don't know if I call it extensive, but one that was expected to sideline him for a decent period of time based upon it. It also came kind of late in the year based upon their playoff run, right? We don't know when Sorokin had that surgery, nor do we know what this surgery was. So right now it's just pure speculation in terms of breadth and length of time he's going to be out.
Well, I mean, maybe later today, Francisco Lindor will be calling Sorokin and finding out just what's what.
Yep. Well, he's been playing with a back injury for a while also, which we just found out. So good to know that as well. And the first thing I saw when I saw the play on the replay, I was like, oh, crap, I have David Wright visions all over again based upon the way he stepped in.
Well, his was different, though. Spinal stenosis is different. I don't think
I have stenosis. Trust me, it's brutal on both sides, and it's not necessarily fun. So
yeah, I get it.
So okay, prior to that breaking news, the big story that came out less than an hour ago, what was sort of expected because during the NHL media tour, Sidney Crosby had hinted that things were going to get done. And they did get done, Russ, a 2-year deal at $8.7 million, which is a familiar number for Sidney Crosby. Now, I didn't realize that was the amount that he has signed on contract extensions after his ELC. So you're talking about, his ELC started in 05-06. So that would be 08. So from 08 until the end of this deal, which is 2027, that's 19 years at the same salary. I think he deserved a little bit of a raise, but that did help the Penguins over the years.
Well, I think, NHL money is a little different than regular working wages in the U.S. So,
come on, I make tons more than that.
But I will say this: there's an article at www.scmp.com, and they talked about the 7 richest hockey players. And this was just this past January. Mr. Crosby's at number 4. He is worth $75 million. So I guess he has figured, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, and
well, this is typical Crosby, though, right? He has always put team over individual. He's done it in his career, as you said, Mike. I mean, the 8.7, you could have argued the last several years he should have been higher, right? We all know what his point total would have been if he unfortunately didn't have the concussions early on in his career. The piece of the puzzle that I found very interesting was and I think Pierre LeBrun had sent it out, was the structure of the contract, right? The majority, I'd say about 90% or close to it, is in a signing bonus, which pretty much means that bad boy is not buyout proof, right? Because if, God forbid, some odd reason happened they wanted to, even if you bought him out, you're not saving any money. I'm not sure from a benefit perspective why they structured it this way, especially on a short-term deal, because salary cap-wise, it's still the same impact salary cap-wise. It's $8.7 million, irrespective of how much he actually is going to get in terms of salary versus signing bonus.
The only thing I can think of, because I looked at his contract, the previous contract, and this year he is an $8.7 million cap hit, but the real money is $3 million and it's flat. So I think what they're doing here is like, okay, he structured it this way. It may have been front loaded at the beginning of it, but at the end of it, it's, I'll take $3 million. Don't get me wrong, but for one of the best 10 players in the league and one of the former best players overall in the league, $3 million is a bargain. So I think they're basically saying here's the upfront money. You're good for it because you're still at 35, 36 years old. You're still one of the best players in the league. So
here's the other part of it. So in 2022, at the end of that season, Sullivan had a 3-year extension kick in. So that goes to 2027, which coincides with Sidney Crosby's contract. So I think we could all say Mike Sullivan will live out the Sidney Crosby contract for sure.
I don't know about that.
Oh, he will. I'm sure that's part of it, Mike. He's not going to go there, and then all of a sudden, in like his last year or the year before, they're going to change coaches on him.
I think there's a possibility if they crap the bed this year that he gets fired.
I don't think so.
We'll see.
Well, I mean, I think we all think that Pittsburgh, irrespective of what it is, offseason is still possibly a little short, right? They're going to be scrambling for a wild card spot for the most part. Part of that's going to depend on how Tristan Jarry plays, which is very much up in the air and is questionable if he'll be the number one. I mean, they lost Riley Smith. They brought in a couple other guys. I mean,
Kevin
but I don't know whether or not they have the horses necessary to really make a run to win that division, given the balance of power that exists right now in the Metro and the other teams that have improved.
And you have to factor in, I mean, okay, I'm not concerned about Crosby dropping off because he seems to be ageless, but with Malkin and Letang, especially them with their history of injury issues, whether like this year all of a sudden Father Time hits and they drop off. I mean, it's possible that happens with Crosby, but I don't expect it. But I mean, that team along with the Islanders, along with Buffalo and Detroit, and maybe Ottawa and a couple other teams. Those are the bubble teams. Those like 5, 6, 7 teams are fighting for 2 wild card spots.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, it's easy for us to say, Pittsburgh's out of it. But if you get 2 or 3 of their guys having career years, and it's Malkin, Letang, and Crosby, there's always a chance.
I mean, Michael Bunting will get a chance to play a full year with Crosby, see how well that goes, right? We know Malkin, you expect somewhat of a rebound year after a down year last year. We figure Carlson's going to produce a little bit better. McGroarty's going to get a shot now that he's there after that trade. And if Jarry proves to be a true number one, I don't think anybody's ruling him out. But on paper going in, I think we're all basically have the same view as they're fighting for a wild card spot at this point in time.
Yeah. Now, an interesting article that came out earlier this morning from Pierre LeBrun regarding the Askarov trade. And for those who don't recall, Askarov was traded to the San Jose Sharks for basically the same package that the Sharks got for the rental for the deal for the contract to Thomas Hertl. And he was signed long term, but that was, considered a little bit of the penalty in that deal because it was a significant cap hit, and in a way that led to Jonathan Marchessault going to Nashville. But it was David Edstrom in a first-round pick, and I believe in another draft pick,
goalie prospect.
A goalie prospect. Thank you. But the deal is looked upon as a pretty good one for the Sharks because Askarov is considered one of the best young goaltending prospects, has had 2 good years in the American Hockey League in Milwaukee, and clearly did not want to go back to the AHL. The funny thing is he might still end up in the AHL with San Jose, maybe play part-time with the Sharks. They may want to protect him because the Sharks are expected to be horrible this year, at least defensively. But the article from Pierre LeBrun indicated that there were 4 teams: Carolina, Montreal, Colorado, and Philadelphia. I just want to go over the 4 teams quickly here. Start with Philadelphia, Russ. You indicated to me when we talked about this that this is an indication of the Flyers basically recognizing that what they have on hand may not be good enough.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, everybody's got a 2-year deal. Fedotov, Urson. So I think, and now there's no Kolosov. Now they're trying to trade him for a second, which I don't believe they'll get a second. They might get a 3rd or a 4th because team still has to negotiate with them. And get him to come over. So I think they're looking at it and they figured they got together and said, yeah, we could get him. This is a potential upgrade for us, so we'll do that. But it also tells you that they're still in a state of flux too. And it's one thing to be sort of like on the path of a guaranteed rebuild and you know what to expect and fans know but they're not because their coach has other aspirations. So I don't know what the plan would have been. If they had gotten him, would they have traded Fedotov? I don't know. Would they have traded Urson? I don't know. So I don't know what the plan would have been. They may have just gotten him for somebody else. Would they put him in Lehigh? Maybe. But I'm not sure. So I think they would have had to have figured that out as the trade's being made. So I don't think they had it figured out long term. So yeah, there's no telling what would have happened, but I think it's better off that they didn't, just from a trying to figure it out standpoint, because they already have enough problems. You got Peterson and Lehigh, who's got that terrible contract, who has to stay down there. They already, are eating money on that. They don't know what's going on with Ryan Johansson yet. Yes, this is an ELC, sure. But also down the line, Drysdale in another year, you have to figure out if you're paying them. And in Askarov, you would have figured out if you have to pay him in a few more years too. So I don't know. This team just seems like they're perpetually in cap trouble, even when it looks like they're trying to get out of it.
Now, Jan, with the Colorado, Georgiev, who they played over 60 games last year, is in the final year of his contract, making around $3.4 million. So Colorado, we don't, in the article, we don't know who these teams offered. They just deemed that the offer from San Jose was the best of the 5 teams that were interested in Askarov. But if you look at Colorado, it's not that they may not be happy with Georgiev. It's the fact that maybe they're not going to want to pay Georgiev what he's going to want when he becomes an unrestricted free agent. And Askarov is on an ELC and just signed a 2-year deal for around a couple $1 million a year. So that was probably just let's plan for the future type of thing.
I'll say part of that is true in my mind. I mean, I don't think Georgiev had a particularly good year last year. He got outplayed at time by Justice and Noonan, who took over as the number 1 for part of it. And there was some strong rumors when the playoffs started that if Georgiev didn't play well, he was going to get replaced by a Noonan, right? So I think Georgiev comes into camp as the number 1, but I don't know whether or not he'll retain that role. As you said, he's a free agent after the year, and Askarov would have given Colorado a long-term option, right? I'm not sure if they're sold on Noonan being their guy for the future, and Askarov, from the talent that he has and what he would have brought to the table and given the remainder of that team, if they could have locked in, as you said, a cost certainty with a potential number 1 or at worst a 1A, that would have boded well for them, especially as they have to figure out some of their other contracts down the road and have a lot of big money on their books already.
Yeah. The Montreal Canadian part of it, I would suspect with the Canadians that part of their offer would have probably been one of their two young goalies going back in the deal for Askarov. And that's probably something that Nashville wouldn't be interested in, meaning either Caden Primo or Samuel Montembeault. Probably Primo because I think he's still on his entry-level contract. But, you know, the Canadians are having problems in terms of collecting assets. So I can't imagine them trading a Reinbacher or a Demidov or like one of their top prospects for a goalie when it seems like if they're interested in this, Russ, then they are sort of admitting that they don't think their goaltending is good enough to be at a top level. So they're looking to improve on it by getting Askarov, but that's sort of not conducive to what they've been saying. They think their goaltending is good. I don't particularly think it is, but the way they're looking at it, it's like they're saying, well, Askarov would have been an upgrade.
Well, I think in that situation, they're looking at it like, well, Askarov will be the backup to start. We'll see what he looks like. If he's better, great. If not, then he'll keep training and he'll be the goalie of the future. They didn't have to make that move, but if they had them both, certainly it wouldn't hurt them.
Right. And Jan, the other one was Carolina. And I mean, gee, how many times have we been talking about the Hurricanes goaltending problems? Clearly, Freddie Anderson has a year left in his contract. Kochetkov has been there for a couple years. There clearly is no confidence in terms of them going after Askarov and what they've done with Kochetkov over the last couple of years. There's clearly no confidence in their organization on the part of Rod Brind'Amour in Kochetkov. I don't get it. They should play him. They should find out for sure. But they keep diddling around with Kochetkov and keep going back to Ranta, who's now gone, or Anderson. And I mean, this is just another illustration that they're not happy with the goaltending, and this was going to be a way of addressing it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, personally, I think Kochetkov should be the number one. I think he showed last year, especially while Anderson was out. He has the capacity. They went back to Anderson at least to start the playoffs last year. But I think, as you mentioned, with a year left on his deal, with Kochetkov there, he should be made the number one. But part of that also was them hedging their bets, depending on what the cost would have been to acquire Askarov. And look, if you have a shot to get a guy who is viewed, I think, within the industry as definitely a potential number one and above average number one goaltender, depending on the cost. I mean, Carolina has a decent system. We know they have a very deep system. I don't think they have a top end system, but I think it's ironic that the viewpoint is that San Jose beat the other offers, right? The goaltending prospect, and I'll let Russ talk more than I will, is an okay prospect. I don't think it's anything special. Edstrom, I think they like a lot, but I don't think he necessarily is a needle mover. And they gave up a first rounder. I think it's Vegas's first rounder, not their own. They got in the Hurdle deal, so it's not a top first rounder. No. So if that was the offer, I find it kind of ironic that none of the other four teams could have potentially offered more than what they ended up getting back from San Jose to make the deal.
In other news, Elliot Friedman reported in his 32 Thoughts column that the Red Wings continue to negotiate with both Moritz Seider and Lucas Raymond. According to a report in the Detroit Free Press, Steve Yzerman is trying to get him, Russ, both of them signed for under the $8.7 million per year that Dylan Larkin is being paid. I know. And that's this is what I mean. It's like, okay, I get this is the Boston Bruins method of negotiating. It's like nobody can make more money than our team cap. Yes, they can. It's each individual player. Now you can try to maintain some sort of structure here, but these players are individuals. They're wanting to be paid based on their individual talents and what they produce. And that's why for years it pissed me off about the Bruins. I mean, if these players go into it open-minded like Bergeron and Marchand to take less, well, fine. But most teams out there, like Toronto or Edmonton, they have to pay their players what they're worth on the open market. And this is not what these guys are worth.
No, I mean, they definitely can't get Seider for that. A number one defenseman is worth more than a number one center. So that's a proven fact. So that already doesn't work out. So Yzerman can try this. It's not going to work. And Seider may hold out.
Well, the only thing that I've heard, Jan, and this is sort of going to the sort of Austin Matthews method here, is that they may take $8.7 million, but they're not going to take it for 8 years. They'll take it. They'll take it for 4. And then they'll walk themselves to, or maybe 5. They'll eat. They'll pay out for 1 unrestricted year, but they're not going to lock themselves up until age 27 or 28. Or even 29 or closer to 30 on an 8-year deal when they can get another big deal, another big payday when the cap goes up. So if I had to guess, and they're intent on negotiating a deal for both of them at the same amount and less than Larkin, it's going to be a shorter deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, part of the way and I'll use air quotes, sell it, right, is you base it upon percentage of the cap utilization, right? And I think if you went to Larkin and spoke to him, I don't think he'd probably have a problem when they go to him and say, look, we gave you 8.7 based upon where the cap was then. The cap is now. Also, I think there's an age differential between them, especially Sider, based upon comparison age-wise where he is to Larkin and how they're utilized within the team. As you said, number one D-man probably may have a bit more value. And we know Raymond is their number one winger. So, look, Yzerman's playing a very dangerous game here, but this is something that he also has done historically also, as we've seen both in Tampa and with Detroit in terms of negotiating strategy. And as you said, Mike, both guys may opt for the shorter deal, may be a little distasteful for Yzerman, but if the negotiation strategy doesn't change, he may pave the way for both of them to leave much earlier than expected.
The other RFAs out there, there apparently is lines of communication with Winnipeg and Cole Perfetti. So Friedman does not expect there to be a holdout or a lengthy holdout if there is one. He said all quiet on the Jeremy Swayman front. I mean, this is a staring contest, Russ. This is like, it's like, again, we've said this before. Boston made a mistake here in trading Allmark before they got Swayman locked up. And maybe Swayman wasn't going to agree to be locked up. But they need, in an instance where this is a year where they mean to be competitive, are you going to feel safe with Eunice Corpusalo and Brandon Bussey as their goaltending tandem if they can't get Swayman signed?
If I'm Swayman, I'm not going in until I get what I'm worth. So It doesn't matter. Like, hey, they like me. I get it. They gave them all the power. That's their problem. I still want to get what I'm going to get. So, you could go with those goalies, and if you have cup aspirations, you're not getting there. So, at some point, they're going to pay them.
Detroit. I think the bigger issue is, right, as we saw last year with Trevor Zegras, right? Guy reports late or signs late, tries to ramp up from 0 to 60 and strain something, and for a goaltender, given the need to be as flexible as possible and be as stretched out as humanly possible, and maybe, obviously, I'm hoping he's working on his own.
Well, I saw him play guitar the other night, so he's doing stuff.
Right, but again, it's a little different in terms of training on your own as opposed to being in camp, right? So I think there's something to be accounted for that, and that probably should be part of what has to get factored in.
That's on the road. Like, he can only do what he can do.
No, I'm disagreeing. I'm not disagreeing with you, right? But if I'm Boston, I'm like, you know what? The longer we wait here and the longer it takes to get him in camp, the greater potential of injury that exists based upon if you're going to try to have him ready for the beginning of the season.
Yeah, they want everything. The teams want everything. They want the guy. They want him here now. Whatever. Sometimes that doesn't line up.
Yeah. Friedman says he does not believe that there's going to be a holdout with Dawson Mercer in New Jersey. He says stress-free negotiation between Thomas Harley and the Stars. I think Harley recognizes that the Stars are sort of blocked by those lengthy, the expensive contracts of Sagan and Ben. So he probably takes a bridge deal and then gets paid a couple years down the road. Jonathan Berggren signed a 1-year deal with the Red Wings at $825K. The interesting thing that happened yesterday, Russ, was the signing of James Van Riemsdyk with Columbus on a 1-year deal. And I did see it mentioned that of the possibility of Phil Kessel signing with Columbus, which I heard those sort of rumors over the weekend when Columbus was in town, and they're still in town for the rookie tournament here in Buffalo. But it makes more sense now with Van Riemsdyk, his former line mate with Toronto. If he's there, then Kessel signing might make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it might. I mean, again, there's going to be a point where either the NHL says you don't have to reach the cap floor, or they say you do, and Kessel may be the beneficiary of that money. I mean, it may be that way.
Well, Jan, I mean, this is the thing. It's like, I mean, the NHL and the NHLPA can't be heartless when it comes to the Blue Jackets and their situation right now. It would be one thing if the Johnny Gaudreau tragedy had happened in July, when there were a plethora of players out there that you could, pay and get to the cap floor. It happened in late August or early September. It happened, August, at the end of August. So all the free agents are out there, and it doesn't make any sense for the Blue Jackets to be like the Blackhawks and pay players just simply for the fact of, like Nick Foligno and Corey Perry to get to the cap floor. That's just I think there is going to be some sort of waiver. I would hope the NHL would do that. If they don't, I'm fairly critical of what they're doing.
No, absolutely agree. I mean, I'm a little surprised that it hasn't been done already. It may be something that they're just waiting for the right time, given how raw and how fresh it is. I mean, I thought JVR said a lot of the right things in terms of yesterday, which you expect as a veteran to help the room manage a little bit, help the room deal with it. They know there's going to be ups and downs associated with it. It's going to be the day-to-day thing. I think getting Kessel is not a bad move. I mean, it'll just give you, Mike, a lot of fodder to talk about for the next several months, because we know you love talking about Phil Kessel. He's one of your favorites. And, our text messages will have a certain term referred to him all the time. So we'll be looking forward to that. But I think JVR is
on that hot dog.
There you go. But I think JVR is, a good solid ad. And I think the NHL will probably come out and eventually say, look, we're giving this year, due to the circumstances, they are being waived from having to meet the floor associated with the cap, and that will just end it. I think everybody presumes that's the case. They'll just have to formally make it evident to everybody, just so that it's clear for the league as a whole.
Now, we haven't seen this confirmed yet. So as we were saying, what do you think of the Kevin LeBanc PTO with the Devils? We talked about this on Off the Post yesterday, and it hadn't been confirmed. I haven't seen it confirmed.
It's confirmed.
It is confirmed? Okay. I have no problem.
They signed him, and they signed a defenseman also. I'm blanking on the D-man, but they signed a D-man also for PTO.
I have no problem with it, because LeBanc was a pretty good player with the Sharks, and he dropped off last season. But a lot of players dropped off with the Sharks last season. Russ, what do you think of LeBanc as a PTO with the Devils?
Yeah, I like it. I think he'll find. I mean, he can skate and he has skill. Doesn't play defense. I get it, but he could be good on the power play, on the second power play. He probably could find some sort of chemistry with either Hughes, Bratt, Mercer when he gets there. So I think it's smart. You might get a guy here that could add you 15 goals like Daniel Sprong in 10 minutes a game.
I'm not sure who Dr. Cloutier is quoting here. He can tell us. Fully expect the Oilers to be in the market for a second pairing right defenseman at some point, preferably with a little term left. Yeah, and I want the Brooklyn Bridge. I mean, come on. I mean, yeah. I mean, what are they going to give up? That's what I'd like to know. It's like, they don't have a ton of draft capital, because they've been trading, draft picks to get players like Adam Henrique. They got at the deadline. So,
Rasmus Ristolainen, I will tell you, he hasn't played in 5 months. He needs camp. He needs a lot of minutes to see if he could stay healthy.
Okay. So Dr. Cloutier says Bob Stauffer on the Oilers radio station. Okay. I'll offer you Connor Clifton from the Sabres. He's got 2 years left at $3 million.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a second pairing guy, but that's
Here's
not
all I would say. I mean, no offense to Bob Stauffer, but easier said than done this late in the year, right before the year starts, this late in the summer, trying to get a second pairing defenseman. Everybody has a plan for their second pairing defenseman.
And they have
not just a second pairing defenseman, a right-handed second pairing defenseman seems to be much more rare also.
So that's a top 4 right-handed D. Okay, like I said, I want to date with Jessica Chastain. I'm not going to get it, but no, but okay. they don't have any cap space. So,
Right.
Jan, like you say, well, we like Jacob Trouba, and Jacob Trouba is a second pairing right defenseman. Do you have $8 million to fit him? No. What are you going to give up? I mean, that's the thing. It's like they're, if Broberg was still around with a cheap salary, or Holloway, those would be guys that you might have maybe included in a deal like that. But that's what I'm saying. I they can wish for that, but I just don't see it.
I do want to answer to what Dave Power said, because this is the discussion we had on Off the Post. He's like, hey, Columbus has to get to the cap floor. That should just be the way it is. And other teams may feel that way. They may say, hey, this is a tragedy. This is terrible, but these are the rules, and we don't want to share revenue with you unless you're actually at the cap floor. So then Don Waddell has to make a choice. You either overpay Phil Kessel or you make a trade for a player with salary. That's what you do. Or you wait for the PTOs and sign 2 more when 2 get cut. There's like 5 PTOs out there. They're not all going to make it.
Yeah. Dan B says Justin Hall, wings retained half. Yeah. No, are you talking about that for Columbus? Or are you talking about Oilers? No, he's talking about that for Edmonton. He's talking about that for Edmonton.
No, but Dave Power talked about this for Columbus. Then
no, right. And he said too bad that Marner wouldn't waive to go to Columbus. He may go there next year because they'll probably be the only organization that'll pay him 13 or 14.
He will never go to Columbus. He's not going to play in Columbus.
Well, he's not going to play in Toronto, probably.
You say that, but I can tell you this: wherever he plays, he's not going to go to Columbus. He's going to want to go to a playoff contender, and that's where he's going to sign. I bet he'll even take a little less if the team is really good. So, well, listen, you could laugh, Mike, but if Toronto
no. I'm laughing because God forbid he would take a little less to stay in Toronto.
Well, that's the whole thing. He's not going to do that based on the salary structure there. But he might go somewhere. Let's just say it was Boston. He might take less from Boston if he feels.
He's going to rob the fucking bank in Toronto, but he'll take less to go someplace else.
You know how it is. The big city teams always have to pay the full freight. The Rangers always have to pay the full freight unless a guy's older and like a quick and he decides that just wants to play there. Most of the time, these big cities have to pay the full freight. Toronto's one.
And those who think I'm being hypocritical, I was saying the same damn thing about Nylander. He didn't take $1 less. He took in fact, I think 11.5 is too much. But that's what was it, Dave? Do you feel Marner should be okay to take less? He will never take $1 less than Nylander. I will bet you anything.
No, he won't do that.
Yeah, I will bet you anything.
I wouldn't either if I was him.
Well, he's not as much of a goal scorer. He's a bigger point producer.
Well, but that's what matters. He's a bigger point producer.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. I thought we lost you there, Jen. But that we'll be back sometime later in the week. Probably not on Wednesday because the Sabres camp opens on Wednesday, maybe Thursday. Will depend on Russ's availability. He's going to the the Fall Classic, Russ? Yeah, in Pittsburgh. So we will keep everybody in the loop. For Jan Levine, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.